folks who discovered this channel through my UFC predictions video last week. It's time to make another MMA video, and this was suggested by @GFUM115 in the comments of my NFL players quiz, and I'm so glad that you guys are enjoying this format of quiz videos, and I'll be making a lot more in a bunch of different sports. But for today's quiz, same rules apply. So if you answer correctly on the first clue, you get 3 points. If you answer correctly on the second clue, you get 2 points. And if you answer correctly on the third clue, you get 1 point. There will also be a bonus question for every fighter, a 2-point question at the end to wrap things up, and so there are total possible points. What am I trying to say? There are 50 points up for grabs in this quiz. But because of the format of the quiz, I think if you get like 50, that's considered a high score. And I will give you the overall hint before we start that each fighter that I'm going to quiz you about has fought or is fighting in the UFC. So has fought in the UFC at some point in their career. I'm not going to quiz you on other MMA fighters. But in any case, let me know in the comments what score you got, and we'll start with the first question. And I have my trusty boxing glove to tap on while I let you think a little bit. So the first question, I think I'm starting you off with a bit of an easy one like we did last time. For 3 points, he is a 2-time world champion in combat sambo. For 2 points, this lightweight started wrestling at 8 years old, coached by his father. And for 1 point, he retired from the UFC with a 13-0 record. The answer is Khabib Nurmagomedov. So, just to reiterate, there's not 6 points up for grabs. There's a maximum of 3 points. You get it. But for a bonus point, can you tell me what Khabib's nickname is? I feel like he's one of those fighters that got bigger than his nickname, and he just became known as Khabib rather than the nickname that he started out with. So, can you tell me what his nickname was? The answer is the Eagle. Okay. So now you've got the hang of it. Here's the next question. For 3 points, his real last name is Da Silva Barra de Souza. His real last name is Da Silva Barra de Souza. For 2 points, this light heavyweight boasts 17 first-round finishes in the UFC. say 17 first round finish. And for 1 point, he dislocated his shoulder. I'm sorry, I had to mention it. He dislocated his shoulder doing the worm after a win at UFC 235. The answer is Johnny Walker. Walker is actually his first name, so his full name is Walker Johnny da Silva Barra de Souza. But for a bonus point, against who did he get his most recent win? The answer is Anthony Smith. How you doing so far? Next question. For 3 points. He has 2 brothers who have played in the NFL. For 2 points. He got his nickname due to his lean frame while he played high school football. For 1 point, he has the longest total fight time in UFC light heavyweight history. The answer is Jon Jones. For a bonus point, plus or minus, let's say 10 minutes. What is Jon Jones' total fight time at light heavyweight? The answer is 5 hours, 40 minutes, and 15 seconds. So if you answered between 5 hours and 30 minutes and 5 hours and 50 minutes, you get a bonus point. Next question. For 3 points, before becoming a professional fighter, she worked as an animator, like at an animation studio. For 2 points, she was eliminated in the first round of The Ultimate Fighter, A Champion Will Be Crowned, which I think was the 20th season of Tough. She was eliminated in the first round. For 1 point, she boasts the second highest number of significant strikes landed in UFC history for man or woman. The answer is Angela Hill. Only Max Holloway has more significant strikes landed than Angela Hill. But for a bonus point, how many significant strikes has she landed during her UFC career? And I'll give you the point if you're plus or minus 25. So how many significant strikes has she landed? The answer is 1,896. So if you answered between 1871 and what did I say, plus or minus 25, so 1921. Between 1871 and 1921, you get the bonus point. Next question. For 3 points, despite never winning by submission in the UFC, he is a brown belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. For 2 points. In 2022, one of his fights ended in a no contest due to an accidental eye poke. For 1 point, he will defend his belt at UFC 299. The answer, of course, is Sean O'Malley. For a bonus point, so Sean's record is 17 wins, 1 loss, 1 no contest, who is the only fighter to win against Sugar Sean. The answer is Chito Vera. Next question. For 3 points. He has fought in 3 UFC divisions, most recently at bantamweight. For 2 points. He has the second most total fight time in UFC history. For 1 point, he is the first 2024 UFC Hall of Fame inductee. So if you watched the Toronto pay-per-view, you should have this. The answer is Frankie Edgar. For a bonus point, I mentioned that he has the second most total fight time in UFC history, who is the only fighter to have more fight time in the UFC than Frankie Edgar. The answer is Rafael dos Anjos. Dos Anjos has 8 hours, 26 minutes, and 49 seconds. And Frankie Edgar has 7 hours, 57 minutes, and 10 seconds of fight time. Next question. For 3 points, in her 6 UFC fights, she has only spent 12 seconds in bottom position. For 2 points, she won 3 fights by submission in less than 1 year. So 6 UFC fights, half of them ended by submission back to back to back in 1 year. 12 months. And for 1 point, this flyweight is fighting in March. The answer is Erin Blanchfield. For an extra point, what is Blanchfield's current flyweight ranking? The answer is second. She's behind Valentina and the champ Alexa Grasso. Alright, next question. For 3 points, he started training in Taekwondo at 7 years old, but he later stopped training to play soccer for a couple of years. For 2 points, he has a 13-win fight streak. A 13-win streak in the UFC. And for 1 point, he is currently ranked number 1 in the UFC's men's pound for pound ranking. Number 1 pound for pound. The answer is Islam Makhachev. For a bonus point, what year did Islam make his UFC debut? The answer is 2015. He made his debut at UFC 187 against Leo Kuntz, where he won by rear naked choke in the second round. Next question. For 3 points, there is a 300-pound statue of him standing in an octagon in his hometown. Got a cracky chair. For 2 points, he has appeared in a Marvel movie. Now, this might be a dead giveaway for some of you guys, but I haven't seen the movie, so I decided to make it the second clue. Some of us are behind on the Marvel movies. For 1 point, he has landed the most takedowns in UFC history. The answer is George St-Pierre. For a bonus point, can you tell me how many takedowns, plus or minus 5, GSP has in his UFC career? The answer is 90. So if you answered between 85 and 95, you get the point. Next question. For 3 points, he began training in MMA while doing a plumbing apprenticeship. For 2 points, he won the 2016 ESPY Award for Best Fighter. For 1 point, he has headlined the 5 highest selling UFC pay-per-view events. The answer is Conor McGregor. UFC 229 drew 2.4 million pay-per-view buys, which is the most ever for an MMA event. For a bonus point, can you tell me in which round Khabib submitted McGregor at UFC 229? The answer is the fourth round. He submitted him via neck crank in the fourth round. Next question. For 3 points, we talked about Angela Hill earlier. This fighter defeated Angela Hill at UFC 238 in 2019. For 2 points, she was the first Chinese woman signed by the UFC. I kind of like that clue. For 1 point, after knocking out Jessica Andrade in the first round last year, she is getting a shot at the strawweight title this year. The answer is Xiaonan. I want to get this right. Xiaonan. For a bonus point, Xiaonan made her UFC debut at Fight Night Bisping versus Gastelum. But can you tell me in which city this event took place? Fight Night Bisping versus Gastelum. The answer is Shanghai. Next question. For 3 points, he has a 3rd-degree black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu under Minotauro Nogueira. For 2 points, he made his UFC debut at Ultimate Fight Night 5 in 2006, where he won Knockout of the Night and took home $36,000. For 1 point, he has the longest winning streak in UFC history. The answer, I'll give you a minute. The answer is Anderson Silva. He has a 16-fight win streak in the UFC. So for a bonus point, can you tell me who broke his win streak? The answer is Chris Weidman. Silva actually had those 2 back-to-back losses against Weidman in 2013. Interestingly, those 2 losses happened at almost the exact same point in the fight. There was only, I think, a 2-second difference between the 2. There's the knockout, and then, of course, that horrific leg break that ended the fight in a TKO. Okay, now the final question of the quiz. It is worth 2 points ask you to name 2 fighters, and you get 1 point for each fighter that you name correctly, right? So, some background. UFC 200 was the first event that the UFC hosted at T-Mobile. Originally, it was supposed to be headlined by McGregor and Nate Diaz, but the UFC pulled McGregor after he tweeted that he had retired. Then the UFC announced the new headliner would be DC and Jon Jones, but days later, USADA pulled Jon Jones because of a positive, I guess it's a positive substance test. He failed a substance test. So here's the question. For 2 points, can you tell me which fighters became the headliners for UFC 200? I'll give you a hint. It was I don't know if this is too much of a hint, but here it is anyway. It was the women's bantamweight championship bout. And the answer is, drumroll please, Miesha Tate and Amanda Nunes. So you get 1 point for each of those fighters that you named correctly. And that, with only a minute left on my camera, is the final question. It brings us to 50 possible points. So don't forget to let me know in the comments what score you got. We'll be back with more of these quizzes in different sports. But until then, I'll see you in the next video.